Well, hey everybody, hope you're having a great Monday so far. We just wanted to recap and talk about the message yesterday. For a little while, we kicked off a brand new series called Relationship Rehab, and we started off with dating, which is an interesting topic for the church. What does the Bible say about dating? How can we bring in biblical principles into our dating relationships? But before we do anything, it's this guy's birthday.
It is.
How old are you today?
I am 28.
Man, you're old. You're old. Hey, but happy birthday, Dylan Dodson. Hope it's a great one. You're with me, so I know it will be. But yeah, so let's just kick it off. You began yesterday with talking about this mold. Sometimes we create these checklists of what we want in someone who we're going to date. Sometimes they are realistic, and other times they're not, as we saw yesterday. So what did you mean by that?
Yeah, so I titled all of my messages in this series, which I'm really excited about.
Creative.
So yesterday it was called It's Not You, It's Me, kind of the joke of like, that's what people hear. But what we said, excluding like abusive or neglectful relationships, but in normal relationships, the problem with our relationships is not the other person, the problem is us. And so often, especially in our culture today, we're told and we think that the person that we're supposed to date and be in a relationship with and marry is supposed to fulfill all of our desires, make us happy. And so we were talking about, checklists that people make. And girls typically make more checklists than guys. I mean, guys kind of have things in their head, but I was kind of making a joke about, especially when you're younger, you ever had a list of like the things you wanted your boyfriend or girlfriend to have, and I found this. I only Googled one. I only had to go to one webpage, and I found it. I found this checklist that this lady, her name was Laura, and she wrote in college. She said she wrote like 10 years ago, and it was like the ultimate like, find my boyfriend, he better be perfect. She had 45 items. And with each item had a point value assigned to it, with a maximum of 65 points, but you needed at least 50 points. And it was just crazy. I mean, some of the stuff, like you have to look a certain way, do a certain thing. But the things was like the type of car they had to have, like an SUV, that you have to parallel park and be able to change its tire and have legible handwriting. She had one, I won't go on and on, it was pretty funny. She had one that you have to be a good kisser, but she would determine it. So she was like watching you from afar. If you got 30 points on her little list, then she would I guess she would walk up to you and be like, hey, I don't know if you want to ask me out, but if you wanted to, I need to see if you're a good kisser. And she's like, and give you a point back. So it's just this funny thing of like, we have all these expectations. Now, we should have some standards. If you're a Christian, you should want them to love Jesus and all that sort of thing, have integrity and character. But it just becomes so crazy because we have like every little tiny detail that we want someone else to check off the list. And the funny thing that we were talking about after the service was then, but we couldn't even check off all those lists.
Right.
And so we have completely unrealistic expectations in some ways about what it means to find someone and to date.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think overall, not everybody, but overall, girls are looking for, while the list may be shallow, there are real things that they're looking for, whereas with guys, I think the biggest thing is like, how cute or attractive is she going to be to my friends? That was the biggest thing.
What's funny? I was just finished reading another book that wasn't necessarily on dating, but the author was talking about sexual immorality and period sort of thing. It was talking about how women are looking for love and men are looking for lust. And so a lot of the things that we come into, it's like, I want a guy to have all these things, and then I'll know that he loves me, all that sort of thing. And a guy's like, that's overgeneralizing. Right. But then, it's like, well, I want her to be this type of way, but I also want her to look this type of way.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just crazy.
Well, and the number one question, as soon as a guy, because I can't speak for girls, but being in a group of guys, when one of your friends says, oh, I'm talking to this new girl, or like I went on a date, what do you ask? Oh, let me see a picture of her. It's never like, so how was she, man? What was she like? And not that it has to be a sexual thing at all, but nevertheless, we go to, well, what does she look like? And I think there's a lot of pressure when guys are dating a new girl of, man, she's great, but what are my friends going to think of her looks, And like I said, it's not always sexual. Sometimes it is, but that's kind of the pressure that we have going into dating or thinking about dating. So on the flip side of that, what would you say are some things that we can do before we date someone? Well, like you said, we want to have expectations, but they need to be realistic. What is our mindset, or what can our mindset be when looking to date somebody?
So some of the things are crazy. It's like they have to have this type of car, or they even have, especially in Christian circles, I think it goes even to an extreme of like, they have to have this type of job. Like, I always imagine myself marrying someone who has and it's like they could be an amazing person because they don't drive an SUV, and they're not an engineer. You're like, I can't do it. Or we have all these plans for our life, and unless this person fits all of our plans, and we're not going to like compromise at any degree, because again, it's all about us. So I think some wise things that we could do And really what we were talking about yesterday is at the end of the day, are we the type of, maybe this is cliche, but it's true, are we the type of person that we want to date?
Yeah.
Are we the type of person that we want to be with? And we read Romans 3, which is not necessarily a relationship passage. Really, Romans 3:23 is talking about how all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And we're just talking about the fact that we're all broken and need a Savior and need Jesus. And if we understand that we're broken and we need a Savior and that we need forgiveness and that another person can't fulfill us, then when we go to date, if we're talking about how like often attracts like, so if you're pursuing Jesus, then hopefully the person that you want to date is also pursuing Jesus, so then they also won't be looking at you to fulfill them and to answer all their longings, and they would also know that you need grace.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think Romans 3:23 does a really good job. While it doesn't talk about dating, like you just said, it does do a really good job of explaining who we are. Mm-hmm. And so, like, naturally, it's very easy for us in the natural flesh. We see that we are fallen, so that means we are sinful, and we don't have this perfect, holy, righteous mind or nature. That does go into the people we look for if we're not careful. I mean, once again, going back to guys, who cares what she's like as long as she's good looking? And we know that is so dangerous, and that's not, there's nothing wrong with dating an attractive girl, but if that's the only thing that we're going for, it would be interesting to check and see how our fallen nature plays into even our dating relationship, which the world might say you're just dating, which we're going to talk about, but to a Christian, it's like, no, man, you're doing something with that. So I think it's really cool to talk about how we must understand who we are first before we look into dating somebody. And on that topic, we kind of shifted our conversation as we flowed through Romans 3 of, man, this is who we really are. And so while you have two fallen people dating, we see that dating is super important. Yeah. So what does it look like for the Christian today? Why is it important? Because, the world would tell us, just hop around. You know, they don't have to be perfect, but just find someone whoever makes you happy. But for a Christian, it's more serious than that.
Yeah, so we talk about, too, like dating is serious because the point is to find a spouse. I mean, that's the point. Yeah. And if you have bought into a lot of the cultural lies about what dating and sex is supposed to be, then you're going to find yourself in a lot of broken relationships. I'll put it this way. I just use one example to show how we view dating is destructive and not helpful. And of course, even as we try to pursue Jesus, we're obviously heavily influenced by our culture. So one of the things we looked at was sex. So the flippancy with which we view sex and dating affects our relationships. So, for example, in the last 60 years, millennials, which are kind of the young adult age group right now, are having the least amount of sex ever. At the same time, that sex is more available than ever before. We've got online dating apps, which online dating is great, but the downside is it makes you feel like you have to find the perfect person because everyone's available. We have apps where you can literally just, like, this idea of hooking up and having sex and sleeping with someone who you don't even know, like, that is purely there's nothing like serving. It's not a judgment or condemnation, but it's all about what I want.
Right.
And what's interesting is we're having the least amount of sex ever as a young group and what happened 60 years ago, the sexual revolution, which kind of was supposed to get rid of the outdated views of sex, and we're supposed to be free. So the question is, why are young people today having least amount of sex when sex is the most readily available it's ever been? And I was reading a bunch of stuff and researching, and what was funny to me, not funny, but interesting, is that no one really came to this conclusion. Now, a lot of people did, but you couldn't find online, because we kind of view sex as like this amazing thing. It's kind of something that our culture idolizes, like our sexuality defines us. If you're not having sex, then you're oppressive and you're missing out on life. And so my opinion and conclusion, I think a lot of believers would kind of see this, is that could it be the reason why we have so much broken relationships and so few young people having sex is because we actually bought into the lie that sex was supposed to fulfill us, that our relationship with someone else was supposed to fulfill us, and then we engaged in those things, and then we found out, oh wait, I still have all my same issues, and so now we're just like, well, I don't even know what to do with this. I don't want anything to do with it because we bought into the lie that these things were supposed to fulfill us. And we were just saying this yesterday, like, what could it not be that God's design for sex and relationships is life-giving and healthy and amazing, but you have to do it within the right context. And if you just use dating as what I can get out of this person, or it's just this fun thing, or sex the same way, then we shouldn't be surprised when we find ourselves broken and hurting and full of regret because we viewed sex and relationships as something that it's not.
And it's sad because I've known people who have kind of hopped around to, like, we took our relationship to that level, but she's not really who I thought she was. Mm-hmm. And so I just hopped to someone else. Yeah. And so we see, like, man, that pattern of, because I think you're absolutely right. When we buy into this lie that it's all about you, naturally we are sexual creatures. So like the epitome of all of that is, my sexuality is the most important thing about me, and I should be able to express that however I want to. But yet we don't always see the effects of that until it's too late. And I think it brings us to this point that the habits that we're making now, especially as Christians, the habits that we're making now in our dating relationship will flow into our marriage relationship. You mentioned yesterday a lot of guys, and I'm just speaking of guys because that's who we are. I'm not going to speak for girls. But a lot of guys say, oh, I'll quit looking at porn when I'm married. Or, yeah, I'm not smart with my money now, but once I'm married, I will budget and I will spend wisely. It's almost as if, marriage is special, marriage is higher than dating, but it's almost as if dating doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so we see that on one side, it does matter because you're miserable. Even though you're doing what makes you happy, jumping around to different sexual partners is miserable at the end of the day. And also we see that you don't quit porn just because you're married, and you don't just start saving and become automatically financially wise because you took vows. And so the habits that we're making right now, drastically affect what we do in marriage.
What we were saying, like, habits are called habits because they're things that we do.
Yeah.
And if we want to pursue dating in a relationship, if we want to have a strong relationship, then we need to start forming habits that set us up for a strong relationship. So, porn, for example, and purity, well, if you're watching and engaging with it now, when you get married, you're not just going to stop. Like, you want to be able to pursue that, or, working hard in your career, or doing well with finances. There's lots of things we could do. But if we want to start pursuing Jesus now, and one of the things we talked about too is a quote by Tim Keller that said, relationships are not about your happiness, they're about your holiness.
Yeah.
And what we said is that as you pursue your holiness, a lot of that, which is like pursuing Jesus, and as we pursue Jesus, we do things that Jesus did. So we love others, we serve others. I think what you'll find is as you pursue your holiness, your relationships will be a lot happier because you're both loving and serving one another. And so that's what we're talking about. Like, we want to form good habits now if you're single or if you're dating, because you're going to carry those into the relationship with you. And one other thing we mentioned, I think is really important, we mentioned this when we talk about relationships, is that at the end of the day, a relationship or your relationship status, though, doesn't make you, it's not what makes you valuable, and this isn't a do these things so that you can have a relationship. So I think a lot of times people are like, well, and it's always people that aren't single, which would drive me crazy if I was a single person. It drives me crazy, I'm not a single person. They say, you just need to be content in your singleness, and then God will give you someone. And I'm like, yes, there's some wisdom there. We want to be content with our situation, but desires in and of themselves are not wrong. And a lot of times God gives us good desires. Like, there's nothing wrong with desiring a relationship. It's like, we don't tell someone who's at the bottom level, entry level of their job, you just don't need to desire to move up and to pursue good things. And once you're completely content with where you are, then God will promote you.
Yeah.
Or we don't tell people, you need to be completely content and not have any desire to make more money. Because once you are, then God will give you more money. Now, yes, you want to be content, but it is unbiblical to say you need to do this and then God will give you this.
Right.
Because that doesn't happen in any other situation. I'll just use an example. It's pretty serious, but I used it yesterday. Like, you don't tell someone who's struggling with infertility, you know what? You need to be completely content with the fact that you don't have kids, and then God will give you a kid.
Right.
Like, that's not true, because God does not operate on a get what you deserve basis. That's why Jesus came.
Yeah.
That's what grace is. So number one, it's not do these things and then I'll have a relationship. And number two, we just mentioned that your relationship is not what makes you important.
Right.
Like, whether you're single or dating or married, what makes you significant is the fact that Jesus bought and paid for you.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with your relationship status. And I think in the church, a lot of times we were talking before we got on, that we value relationships, particularly if you're married, and then you're kind of dating, engaged, and if you're single, then it's like, well, we don't really have a use for you.
Right. And I love that, because, God isn't a genie who we just, if we perform well enough,
right,
then we get what we want. Or if we can just, be content, whatever that looks like for us, then God promises something. Because a lot of times, first of all, if we have that mindset, it's going to let us down. Because contentment is hard. And so if you were to actually get to that place where you're like, you know what, I'm content where I'm at, and then say that promotion doesn't happen or that relationship doesn't happen, you already had a wrong view of God, but you're just going to go deeper into that hole, because it's like, God, you didn't come through on your side, and it's like that's not how the God of the Bible works, which we should be grateful for. But you mentioned, I think there's this lower tier of, if you're single, there's no place for you. And what really bugs me is that at some, like, different churches, I don't know if churches still have these, but I've seen them before, they have this singles ministry, which I get what they're trying to do as far as like, all the singles get together. But that's just super awkward. Like, I just feel like it's ostracizing me a little bit. Or we have, family ministries where it's like we have to explain, well, I'm not a family. Can I come? Well, yeah, you can come, and it's just for them, that kind of thing. And so how should the church respond to singles? How can we
Yeah.
care for them,
Yeah.
and not show them that being single is wrong,
Yeah.
but also not showing them that you can aspire for a relationship?
Yeah.
What would that look like?
Yeah, so first of all, it's okay to be single. Jesus was single. People kind of debate if Paul was
He
single
had a
or
wife,
not.
Dylan.
But we do know at least at
Just
some
kidding.
point in his life he was single.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great people of God who've been single, and
Right.
men and women of God. So singleness does not determine your value. And that's, again, it's not wrong for churches to kind of want to do things for families. Obviously, you need to do things for families, but the problem is everything's about the family, and every event's about, like, if you go by yourself, it's awkward. Like, can I even do anything here? I was talking to a lady probably about 2 months ago. She's probably in her 50s or 60s, been single her entire life, and what she said, probably always remember, she said the problem a lot of times with the church, and this is a lady who's really involved in her church, loves the church, and of course churches aren't perfect, was we kind of promote and do events and do everything for families. When at the end of the day, the people of God is a family. Like, before your biological family is God's family, and the church is made up of individuals. It's not made up of families. I mean, yeah, we're families together, but your relationship with Jesus is a personal decision, and so the church is made up of individuals. And so we need to remember that as we're planning events, as we're doing. I mean, we're doing a relationship series right now, but at New City Church, I mean, this is the first one we've done.
Yeah.
And it's not just about doing things for married couples all the time. Like, you've got to have space for singles to feel like they can contribute, because they can be involved, and like not kind of segregate based off out of your relationship status, which I think, at least in the last 50 years or so, a lot of churches have done.
Yeah, and it's good to have things for married couples. Like, it's
Yeah,
good to have those retreats, or there's really good married conferences that people can attend and watch. But yeah, I think it's so true that, man, if you have someone single coming to your church, like, this might be the one place where they don't need to feel like, oh, I'm outside of this. Like, I'm being ostracized because, one, I don't have a wife or husband, and I don't have kids. And so, yeah, where's the place for me? And that's the last thing we want someone in our church to feeling. And we never want someone asking the question, I don't know if there's a place for me here. So we got to be careful with that. We really have to handle it with gentleness. But we do have a question, so let's get to it. The first question is, should you date a godly person if you don't find them attractive? What do you think? Let me go. I don't think so. I mean, I really, and I say that I don't think so because attraction is important in a relationship. Dating to marriage. I mean, if I don't find my wife attractive, the way that I talk about her, it's going to be seen. If I don't compliment her, if I never say, oh, you look so great today, you're so pretty, or whatever, that's not going to happen. Intimacy. I mean, why would you want to have sex with someone who you weren't attracted to? But in a dating relationship, not that we were saying you're worried about intimacy in dating, but nevertheless, it's like there has to be some pull to this person. Now, on the flip side, we talked about this earlier, it's not all about attraction. You don't want to just date anybody because you're attracted to them. But no, I don't think it would be a flourishing relationship if it was like they're really godly, but I'm not attracted to them. Because, yeah, of course, part of a relationship and human nature is intimacy, and it's not sex within dating, but
right.
there is kissing, there is holding hands, whatever it is, and like I think that's a healthy desire to want to be intimate with someone. Mm-hmm. It's just within the confines of marriage. So I would say no, I wouldn't do that because I don't think it could be healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's wise to be attracted to the person that you are dating.
Yeah.
And then once you get married to that person then becomes your standard of beauty. And so, but yeah, I mean, yeah, if you're not attracted to them at all, then you probably, it's not going to, probably not even going to date them. So.
Right. Well, do you have any final thoughts on, this whole conversation? I believe it's helpful.
Yeah.
Because dating, as we talked about yesterday, while it's not black and white in the Bible, there are things that we can pull from that really help us just kind of guide our life.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so what we said yesterday is dating as we know it today is a very modern invention. Really started with the invention of the car, because now you can go places with people. You don't have to be around other people. You can go wherever you want. So that completely revolutionized relationships as we know it. So the Bible doesn't speak to dating, not to say that dating is right or wrong. It's just different than historically it's been.
Yeah.
A lot of times historically you kind of were just told that this is your spouse. And a lot of times historically you never moved from the town you grew up in. And so you kind of just knew like, oh.
Well, that still happens around the world. Like,
Yeah,
not every country, every culture
right.
dates. Like, there's still that kind of...
So the dating as we know it, there's not really, this is what you should do. So that's why we went back to, the wisest thing that I think you can do when it comes to dating is realizing that you're messed up and you need grace. And so the people that you're pursuing, they need grace, and you're not looking for them to fulfill you. And as you pursue Jesus, What often happens is like attracts like, so you'll probably find people that are also pursuing Jesus, realizing that you can't fulfill them, they can't fulfill you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like tips we could give about dating, but that's what I would say is your habits you form now stay with you. And if you look for someone else to fulfill every box and check off every mark of this perfect person, you're going to be miserable because that's impossible. And I think that's why we have a lot of broken relationships, particularly with young people today. It's because we have a wrong view on sex, and we've got a wrong view about what someone's supposed to bring to us, and that there is supposed to be compromise, and there is supposed to be serving the other. We say verbally that relationships are about serving and loving the other person, but what we really see, it's all about what you want. That's what we see in the movies, everything else about what you want. Sex is about pleasing yourself. If they don't make you happy, leave. Don't settle, which there's some wisdom, and you don't want to date a loser, but like, if they drive an SUV, that's not settling. That's just a car they drive. So yeah, you should have certain expectations, but you should have realistic expectations. Yeah. And you shouldn't do what Laura did and have a list of 45 things that this person's supposed to fulfill, because not even Laura could fill those things.
Yeah. So just like everything in our life, we look to honor God in whatever avenue that looks like for us. So if you're dating someone, honor God in that relationship. Yep. Treat that person, boyfriend or girlfriend, well, with respect, dignity. Compliment them today. And if, wherever you're at in this period, God is with you. God is looking for you to honor him. And I think he has a plan for all of us in that. So every Monday we'll be doing this. Next week we'll be talking about marriage. Yep. So we hope that you will join us at that time. And so we will see you next week. Have a great Monday.